Hey, Derek. Always good to chat with you.
Hey Peter, how you doing? It's great to chat with you again too.
Yeah, keeping busy at headquarters. Hey, so, you know, it's been a while since we've talked about how the whole threat landscape has
Yeah,
changed and what you've seen at FortiGuard Labs with the threat going on. When we first talked, it was kind of a couple months into the shelter in place in the pandemic, and we talked a bit about how we saw a surge of some type of attack and shifted to others. Now we're in kind of 6 months in. What are you seeing now? What's happened since we last talked?
yeah. The threat landscape is very fluid always, but even more so this year. It's been really interesting to watch, and we're watching it closely at FortiGuard Labs, of course. So last time we talked, I think we're talking about some of the shifts, some of the early indicators of the trends, particularly when we looked at things like COVID-19 related social
Mm-hmm.
engineering lures and scams. We have we have traps, honeypots, sensors. We have threat hunting rules where we follow this on a daily basis, actually on an hourly basis, specific to these campaigns. And yeah, I think last time we talked, we saw some promising early indicators. We saw, the COVID-19 related social engineering lures almost halving in volume every month. And, I think we were down from a peak of about 350 different ones per day in late March, April, going down to about just under 100 in the June, July standpoint.
Yeah, I remember we were showing great progress.
Yeah, and that's promising. It's sort of a double-edged sword, right? It's promising because there's impact. I think that's a direct result of the work that we do at FortiGuard Labs, adding more resilience, tracking these, making disclosing those, making it exposing these campaigns to cyber criminals, working with partners like Interpol, the whole nine yards, and so it's good to see that sort of impact. It takes a while, but even looking to today. That number is really dwindled off. In fact, when it comes to email, it's almost non-existent now. We're dealing with single digits to low double digits per day.
Wow.
So significant difference. But as we talked about last time, that's not to say that the threats have gone away. They take new forms because cyber criminals are definitely still lurking out there.
Mm-hmm. So what are you seeing now?
Yeah, well, so we released we just released about a month ago now our first half of 2020 threat landscape report. So that's a good mid-year review to give a pulse check on what's been happening. I would say not too surprising, but definitely very real. What we saw in that report was that for the first time in our threat report, we saw web-based threats taking pole position for the attack delivery methods. And that coincides with what I was talking about with those COVID numbers decreasing in email. So the social, email basically being favored for social engineering lures, shifting to web-based threats. So things like malicious SEO, drive-by downloads, so websites that host exploits to attack victims through malware. Also, vulnerabilities in web, cloud and web services, as an example, web servers. Those are all those have all been the preferred attack method, and I think Peter, that's a direct result of what we were talking about before this whole movement, long term now, of employees going to home networks. And if you think about what people do on home networks, there's a lot of web traffic going to those devices, and beyond the traditional safeguards of corporate email security, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times the home networks they might have a VPN back to headquarters, but a lot of companies have split tunnels where employees can go straight out to those websites. So I guess it would make sense that we might see a rise in attacks from that web vector.
Yeah. The other thing we saw in the report was so that's one side of it. That's like the penetration, compromising of devices. If we look at the payloads that are being sent as well, botnets, IoT is still front and center. We saw Mirai as an example. A lot of these traditional IoT based botnets.
Boy, Mirai came back. Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, big time. and not just, well, these botnets are flourishing in these environments now, if you really think about it, right? Because those, of course, with IoT-based attacks, it's not so much about, why would I DOS your printer or hack your printer? These are stealth hiding zones that they use as springboard attacks, lateral movement, right, to be able to get into the juicy stuff as cyber criminals would look at it.
Yeah, I guess that highlights the fact that home networks are not the safe place. It's not necessarily home sweet home if all these devices become launch board springboards for hackers to actually get back into corporate assets and applications.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That kind of, speaks to a little bit about what we're seeing on the product side, because, at Fortinet, we sell teleworking security solutions, and we've seen a surge in interest in what we call our super user setup, where, for our general user, they would have a VPN client they could connect back to headquarters. But for the super user, we've seen a lot of interest in the idea of putting an actual firewall in the home network. And that really protects that employee from everything else that's in that home network, gives them a completely secure connection back to headquarters, and it's still managed by the IT group. It's not like the employee needs to become an IT specialist to do this. So we've actually seen a surge in interest in that. And so it makes, I think now that we've kind of, I guess, moved to phase 2, where things are looking more permanent and long-term, that we're going to be working from home, people are looking for more permanent solutions. And so I think that's why we're seeing something in our product sales along those lines. Are you seeing anything on the threat side that kind of, mirrors that or reflects that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I meant, sort of alluded to earlier, that it's been interesting to watch, because we can often look at trends and movements and experience of following, in some aspects, similar events, not to this global scale with the pandemic, but regionalized events, hot topics and news and attack tools that are released. So we can go off, education and history that way. And as I said, it's sort of predictable in a sense that, we saw, even with these social engineering lures they're using, the social engineering lures, of course, were related to, phase 1 to some economies reopening. It went from layoff and termination notices to tax benefits and trying to hire, these sorts of things. And now that that's kind of all gone through, as I said, I am seeing the same thing from a threat point of view, where I think, cyber criminals are realizing that now these targets, right, end users, home users, employees working from home, are likely going to be there for the long haul, foreseeable future. So it's interesting, even if we look at non-threat data, it shows us opportunities that attackers are looking at. This is just the state, I would say, of the landscape out there right now. It's interesting. I was just looking at numbers from July and to August as an example, a 1 month difference. VPN usage, from what we see from our application control traffic, is up with 34%. It's a pretty significant rise just from July to August. Yeah, and probably more interesting, I would say, would be RDP. A good old RDP, remote desktop protocol. This has been around forever. And that we saw a surge in that, is 85% increase with RDP traffic. And of course, if we look in the past, you don't have to look any further than old culprits like WannaCry, NotPetya, all these things that really thrived on RDP vulnerabilities. There's that side of the house, but also the fact that sometimes these RDP ports are opened and attackers see that as a gateway into systems too. So it's something definitely to be very careful of. And of course, just really underscores the importance of securing that, to be able to inspect it, to protect against attacks on that protocol through IPS, as an example. The home firewall solution for super users that you mentioned, I think really ties in.
What do you think is creating all that additional VPN connections and RDP traffic? Because we have pretty much the same number of people working from home in July and August. Why are they generating more traffic of these types?
New setups, I would say, right? So it's that attack surface that's still expanding. I mean, yeah, the people, it may be static, but the platforms and technology aren't, right? There's going to be more VMs, more endpoints being set up, more integration and connectivity, especially now that people are realizing this isn't just a temporary solution, right?
So permanent home offices that might have an extra webcam or an extra keyboard or whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, you know, we did a survey of organizations around their teleworking experience, and one of the things that we discovered is more than 60% of the enterprises were planning on spending $250,000 on teleworking enhancements in the next couple in the rest of this year. So that certainly speaks to the fact that corporations are investing in the infrastructure to enable their employees to be more productive now that we're facing a long-term remote working situation. Also, you know, they're also looking at additional security solutions that they might want to put in place. So we did ask a bit about some of the things that they were doing from a security standpoint. And while most of them did have VPN in there, many of them did not have a multi-factor capability. So I'm sure you could talk a bit about how weak just a username password is and how easily those get stolen and used. So we did see people that they were looking to add multi-factor authentication. Also, there was 60% were looking at adding NAC or EDR NAC so that they could start doing assessments on what was coming in on those VPN tunnels from the home office, and EDR just to beef up the security capabilities of those endpoints that were located remotely, so that they could be a bit more self-healing. They more resistant to the various malwares and ransomware that might attack them.
And managed as well, right? I mean, you hit on that earlier with IT being wanting to be able to obviously control and manage those points outside. Yeah,
that's a big part as well, because they're recognizing that they've got to get their hands around this. Yeah. The last trend we saw was a huge surge in the interest around SASE. You know, there's been a lot of talk recently about SASE. It's pretty big on the hype cycle, but actually a small fraction of folks have actually deployed it. And early on in this part, still a relatively small fraction are planning to deploy. We're talking like 15% had deployed, another 50% are committed to doing it in the near future, but a full 50% are planning to do that. So they're definitely, scratching around to find good solutions for remote work. Well, Derek, it's been fun and educational as always talking with you and hearing about what the FortiGuard Labs team has been seeing up there. It's always eye-opening to see the crazy things you guys are discovering and tracking.
Yeah, rest assured we are here and busier than ever. So, like I said, it's been interesting to watch, but also it's been a critical time for everything, and security and threat intelligence is no exception. So, we're following this every minute, every hour, 24/7, 365 at FortiGuard Labs.
Sounds good. Well, till we talk again next time. Good talking with you.
Yeah, you too, Peter. Take care.